we've been rather positive, and I'll hope you allow me to be at least a little bit negative here. So,
Sure.
I mentioned the opening scene is just like perfect. The rest of the movie never quite gets up to that level, and that's kind of a shame. Although the climax is good, like a lot of the stuff going on in the house. It's also interesting to note that the climax is like a third of the movie. Like they get to that, this is about a 2-hour movie. They get to that house probably an hour and 15 minutes in, right? I mean, that's a big portion of the movie.
Yes.
But as for the problems, I'll put the problems in quotes, and I'll start off first by a complete nitpick. This is just my personal taste when it comes to slasher movies. This movie is too classy. The slasher genre, as I talked last episode about Friday the 13th, the final chapter, the slasher genre is, in my eyes, a genre primarily of sleaze. I like the 80s ones. I like some of the early, the 70s ones before it was a full-on movement, because those are sleazy, exploitation-y films. A lot of nudity, a lot of violence. This movie, no nudity. There's a little bit of sex, but there's no nudity. Listen, I'm not saying the movie's worse because there's no nudity. I'm just saying my personal
You're
preference.
saying you want to see Sydney's titties.
It's Nev Campbell. I've seen Wild Things. I'm all for that, but Wild Things coming up later this season, by the way. But this is completely a personal preference thing. I like horror movies, slasher movies that embrace the sleaze of the subject matter. This tries to take some of the things that are in those movies and do something a little bit more highbrow. We have the virgin character, again, not literally a virgin, but someone who's abstaining from sex, and then she finally has sex, and the whole, like, once she has sex, then suddenly she's, like, about to die, and, like, literally right after she has sex, her boyfriend dies, except obviously he doesn't die. But, like, we even get the, like, when they're, because it's intercut with them watching Halloween and with the PJ Souls scene, it's like Randy's like, oh, here comes the obligatory tit shot, and then it's like Nev Campbell taking off her bra, but you don't see anything, and it's like, was this how it was supposed to be? I just feel like I just feel like it was set up as something different than it was. But so no, that's like a minor thing, and you don't even have to engage in that part of my complaint because it's honestly not a fully formed one. The bigger issues I have with this movie is the meta aspect of it. I don't actually feel like the movie does anything that interesting with that. And I think when people talk about this movie, they talk about like, oh, meta horror, like this is the first horror movie where like the characters in it have seen horror movies, so it's like you can more easily relate to them. And I'm not going to be one of those guys that goes, actually, Return of the Living Dead, it has some meta horror aspects, or Friday the 13th Part 6. Like, I don't care if it's the first or not. This clearly is more fully a meta horror than some of those earlier movies. But I feel like that's just an aspect of the story, and it doesn't enhance it a whole lot. Like, maybe it makes the characters a little bit more relatable, i.e. Randy. I think it works as like that's Randy's character, but I don't feel like it enhances the actual story. That's really one of my biggest issues with it. And I also think, just in general, in the meta horror aspect of this it plays a part. But Scream as a movie, as a series, is, at least in theory, a slasher movie that delves more into realism than other slasher movies, i.e. there's no unkillable Michael Myers or supernatural Freddy. And the fact that the characters have seen horror movies is part of this, because in real life, if we were to be in a slasher situation, we have seen slasher movies. But I don't think the film does much with this. I think it creates a world that's easier to enter, to follow, and relate with the characters, but then at the end of the day, it still gets rather exaggerated with the killers, and it kind of loses that realism aspect. Speaking of realism, you like that Ghostface is clumsy. You like that Ghostface falls down.
He's human.
I know, but it's also like almost like too goofy. I don't know. I guess I appreciate the attempt at realism, but I also feel like it's somewhat half-baked. I feel like it doesn't hit that note in a way that really satisfies. And I suppose the more that I think of this is somewhat of a half-baked complaint as well. I think my biggest complaint is that the meta aspects don't really do much beyond aesthetics. They don't really do much beyond, oh, that's kind of a fun joke or a fun gag. It's fun that Jamie Kennedy is looking at the television and saying, look out, Jamie, he's right behind you. It doesn't enhance the story. It doesn't ultimately elevate the film. One thing I was going to say, there are a couple jokes in this movie. They're both from Tatum that are so dumb. I hate them. There's this one where she's talking to Nev Campbell and she's like, "Oh, calm down, Sid. You sound like you're in some Wes Carpenter flick." And it's like, you know what? Fuck you. If you know enough to know that there's a horror film director named Wes and that there's a horror film director named Carpenter, you're going to get the names right. And then later on, she says, when she's in the garage, she says something about like, "What is this? I spit on your garage." And it's like, okay, I thought Randy was the horror guy. It's just like everyone, because I Spit on Your Grave is like it's not an obscure movie, but it's not like it's like a movie that a random high school girl would be familiar with. I don't know. It was a Jeopardy response a few weeks ago, so that's worth noting, but I don't know. These minor complaints, I'm just like, there's a few jokes that are just too much for me, and those are some of them. I think the Wes Craven cameo as Fred is a bit much, and there's a few other things that is just like, you know. You know what bothers me a little bit about meta aspects, not just of Scream, but of just things of certain media, right? You know, I'm a big literature guy.
Yes.
I've read almost every Shakespeare play. Frequently in Shakespeare plays, namely Hamlet in A Midsummer Night's Dream, there is a play within a play. It always bothered me. Now, I love the play within a play in Hamlet because it serves a story purpose, and I love the play within A Midsummer Night's Dream. It doesn't serve a story purpose, but it's hilarious. However, when people, i.e. professors, and they get students talking about it, when we talk about plays within plays, the conversation usually ends with, "It's meta." It should start with "It's meta," but here it ends with "It's meta," and it's like, okay, what purpose does this serve? Well, I don't know. That's kind of the complaint I have about the meta-ness in Scream. It's like, it's there. I just don't think it serves that much of a purpose. And I'm not saying the Shakespeare meta stuff doesn't. I'm just saying most people don't dig deeper to see what the purpose is. And maybe that's the case with Scream. Maybe I haven't dug deep enough to see what the purpose is, but I'm going to go on a limb and say that's not the case because I've probably seen this movie a dozen times, and I don't know.
Just look harder.
Listen, I've tried. Well, what can you tell me? What's the meaning? What's the point?
I think it's just like,
it's an easier way to relate to the characters.
Yeah, I think it's just supposed to be fun and lighthearted because the story itself is so incredibly dark and depressing. Like, you don't get a lot of trauma.
That's good. That's something. That's fun, and it kind of changes the tone of an otherwise very, very dark thing. That's
I feel like
fun.
a lot of slasher films don't go with the mom being raped and murdered and mom actually being kind of quote unquote the town slut, whatever.
That's fair. Yeah, let's face it, she's no Sharon Stone.
She is no Sharon Stone.
No, that is all fair, and I agree with that, I should say. But that alone doesn't make this, and I shouldn't say alone, that doesn't like make this a horror masterpiece to me. That makes this a mildly unique horror film that's pretty good, that has one sequence that's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen in a horror movie, the opening scene, and has a couple other really good scenes, and I can move on with my life.